All right, folks, welcome to the fifth edition of the Big East Coast Bias Season Preview Hangout. My name is Chris Novak. I am joined alongside by Rob O'Neill, as has been the case for the past few editions. But this time, as my colleague Rob will note, we are joined by a contributor of ours as well.
Yeah, got Phil Knifer here. Phil does pretty much everything for us. There's a lot of baseball, but he came in late in the basketball season. We'll do some more basketball stuff this year, but Phil writes for us and Down the Drive, which is Cincinnati's SB Nation, so he's actually a good guy to have here.
Yeah, I'm not. I've written a lot about Xavier with us, but I've written a lot about Cincinnati, obviously, since Down the Drive is all Cincinnati. So I'll try to keep the bias, slightly down. But yeah, I'll also try not to talk about the crosstown shootout for the entire thing.
Well, hey, welcome. It's nice to have a third person here. Well, actually, we have done a couple with multiple people, but not since we rebooted this have we had more than two people. So this is gonna be fun.
Okay, let's get to it.
This will be different. So, Rob, if you want to.
Yeah. Before we start, did we want to do the SI All-Americans first, or we want to do the NBC thing first?
Let's talk about the Sports Illustrated All-America list that legitimately just dropped like 3 minutes before this hangout went on the air. Sports Illustrated issuing out their preseason All-American list, headlined by Gonzaga forward Kyle Wiltjer. Wiltjer has gotten a lot of notoriety this offseason. He's been picked as Player of the Year by a few publications. The first team on this list features Wiltjer, freshman forward Ben Simmons of LSU, the number one recruit in the country. Guards Buddy Hield and Marcus Page of Oklahoma and North Carolina. And finally, Gorgeous Niang of Iowa State. You'll note that there's a little bit of an omission there. Chris Dunn of Providence is featured on the second team, along with Melo Trimble of Maryland, Fred Van Vliet of Wichita State, Denzel Valentine of Michigan State, and Nigel Hayes of Wisconsin. Reactions, guys, to this?
Well,
Go ahead, Rob.
I thought they were kind of doing one from every position with the first team, but then the second team has four guards, so...
Yeah, a little interesting there.
I mean, there are a lot of good guards. I probably would put Chris Dunn over probably Marcus Page, but you can't complain that much. I mean, Marcus Page certainly plays better competition.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but I just think Dunn, I mean, considering all the accolades Dunn has gotten, it's kind of weird that SI would drop him to the second team, and I just think I think he is a top 5 guy in the country, so I think he should be out there. I do agree, though, Page plays better competition, even though I think the Big East gets a worse rep than it deserves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I thought that it was a little bit of a cop-out to have 4 guards in the second team, 6 guards in total of the 10 All-Americans that were chosen. I know that there's a lot of great guards out there, but it's like you gotta diversify.
That's also what the Big East did last year, though, with the All Big East team.
The Big East, all Big East teams are always confusing. The preseason All Big Ten team had 10 players this year. It's very, very strange. It's not very traditional in that sense.
I mean, no, part of it, though, too, is a lot of your good, centers in the NBA or whatever, they're coming from overseas, so you don't have a ton of true centers in college, so it's hard to, fill all 5 positions.
That's true.
Yeah, but I think it would make more sense to do have 2 forwards on the second team.
Oh yeah.
Although then again, we are also arguing about like the preseason teams, and it's not like this is the team that's going to actually go out and play anyone. It's kind of just a way of saying these are the top 10 guys in the country. You know what I mean? Kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it that way, it's tough to argue.
Yeah.
Any of these guys, so yeah, okay.
But I also agree with the traditional center thing. Like, I mean, the way just basketball in general seems to be going, it's away from having, your big hunking guys in the middle. So having a lineup that would be mostly guards, I think actually kind of fits with how a lot of teams are starting to play now.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, and just going to the other thing that came out today, NBC Sports has been doing their college basketball top 100 all week, and it concluded today, and they had Chris Dunn as the best player in the country, and they said it wasn't close.
Yeah, well, NBC knows what they're talking about, so.
Yeah.
Definitely with you there.
Yeah.
I mean,
how many Big East guys were in it total?
There were 11. It was done. Henry Ellenson was the next one at 25. And then Robert Rivera at 35. I wrote about all this earlier. I should have.
Hart at number 56.
Jalen Brunson's in there in the 40s. I know Kellen Dunham was 69, which I remember because that seems kind of low.
It's not because of the number?
Well, you know. And actually, people that are low that'll actually tie in nicely to what we're talking about today. Trayvon Blewett was 89.
Pretty good for a sophomore.
It seems a little low, though. I mean,
yeah.
If you take what he did last year combined with what he's expected to do this year, I think you could probably put him in the top 70.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I don't know. Part of my problem with these lists is the inclusion of freshmen, because you could be as good of a recruit as ever, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah, I agree. When we were doing the rankings, what was it, for power forwards with Ellenson, I think he's going to be great, but I just, it doesn't help that the Big East doesn't have a huge crop of great power forwards, but I had trouble putting him as number one just because, we haven't seen him play yet. I mean, we have no real idea what he's going to be, at least yet. I mean, I think he's going to be good, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, the NBC list, which we have in full on the website. Well, we have it in full in terms of the Big East players. If you want it in full, you can go to NBCSports.com. All right, let's move on. Talk about Xavier.
All right, so Musketeers coming off of a very successful season. They made the Big East championship game before falling to Villanova by the score of 69-52. Then they went on to get to the Sweet 16 after dismissing Mississippi and Georgia State, and fell to Arizona, who ran into Wisconsin again, just like Oregon did in the round of 32. Arizona continuously getting spurned in their quest to make a Final Four again. But the Xavier team last year, they finished 9-9 in conference. They were a little bit, I don't know if I would use the word inconsistent, but it seemed like they would rattle off a few wins, and they rattle off a few losses, and then just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that, but it worked out for them.
It did in the end. Yeah, I'd agree. They didn't have any. There was no point during the regular season where I was like, oh wow, Xavier's really good. I always was like, they're good, but I was never really if I was a fan of another team, I never would have been that afraid of them. But they came to play in March, so it's really tough to argue with what they did end up doing. I mean, they went farther than any other Big East team in the tournament. I mean, they kind of got blown out by Villanova in the Big East tournament, but I mean, they played great in the tournament leading up to that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all knew Villanova was probably going to win the Big East tournament.
Oh, yeah.
But Xavier did have the close wins against Butler and Georgetown, which ultimately probably helped their tournament stock a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if they had lost in the first, I can't remember who they played in the first round, but if they lost the first round, I'm not sure if they would have gotten in for sure.
Yeah, they beat Butler in overtime, and then they beat Georgetown by 2.
Yeah.
And then
It was a lot. Georgetown, I remember, made a strong comeback towards the end. That game was pretty on hand at one point, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Georgetown made a late push, but it wasn't enough to get the victory for the Hoyas.
And then Xavier didn't have the most difficult road to the Sweet 16, but, they did what they had to do, and they got there.
Yeah, and I mean, it'd be one thing if they had made it to Arizona and Arizona just crushed them, but I mean, Xavier could have won that game. They were right in that for so long. Like they just a few shots go in here and there, and like I think they could have knocked off Arizona.
Arizona pulled away in the last couple minutes. I was tied at the half.
Yeah.
I remember that much, and then I think Arizona just kind of pulled away late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think Xavier was crushed by Wisconsin though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Wildcats scored 21 points in the final 10 minutes of that game to Xavier's 14. So
yeah, that'll do it. But Xavier last year, they weren't a bad team. They weren't that great in conference, but they did play a pretty strong out of conference. In obviously, Cincinnati every year, that's a big game. Alabama, who was down last year, but you're still racking up wins over power conference schools.
Yeah. And they got a nice mid-major win against Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah.
And Murray State as well too.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yep. So all in all, last year I think they'd take it.
Oh, for sure. I think so.
Yeah. And that's 3 Sweet 16s for Chris Mack already, I believe. Chris Mack has actually done an awesome job there.
Yeah, that's 3. That's his 3rd. He made it in his first year, his 2nd, and now last year.
Yeah. And he really has done a great job just picking up right where Sean Miller left off. That's one thing Xavier's done very well ever since Pete Gillen left and they hired Skip Prosser. They've always promoted from within for the most part, and it's always been a good hire, and it's just fit the culture. Yeah,
I've liked what Mac's done there a lot. I like the guys he's brought in. I like how he coaches. You're not going to hear me say anything bad about Chris Mack.
Let's see. Yeah, they lost D. Davis and Matt Stainbrook from last year, and other than that, it's pretty much the same team. I shouldn't say other than that. I mean, Matt Stainbrook was pretty much their everything, but Xavier's he's not the type of player where you lose him compared with the other guys they kept, and I'm worried about Xavier. I still think they're probably going to be a top 4 team this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I actually I don't want to say this definitively, but I think losing Davis might end up being a little bit more of an issue just because he ran that offense so well. And I mean, they're a pretty good passing team, but I think without Davis, I mean, I know, is it Miles Davis they think's going to step in at the point now, or do they know yet? Do we really have an idea?
Well, Xavier's kind of weird with how they've handled their guards and stuff. I know Chris was showing me something earlier. I think it's going to be
yeah, on banners on the Parkway, the Xavier site for SB Nation. They had a post come up today about 3 keys to setting the starting lineup, and the first question was who is the point guard, and I'll read this real quick. It's widely assumed that Xavier will play a classic point guard this season as well they should. That would eliminate Miles Davis and Remy Abel. Both can be effective in initiating the offense for short bursts, but neither are a true point. This competition will come down to either Edmund Sumner or Larry Austin Jr. And right now it seems that Sumner may have a bit of an edge according to banners on the Parkway. So.
Yeah, and I mean Sumner got in a couple games last year. He didn't do much, but he doesn't need to be the best player on the floor.
Well, yeah, that's Blewett. So.
Yeah. So.
Am I saying that wrong? I've never really been able to put together how you're supposed to say that name.
Whose name? Blewett?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just Blewett. That's how I've always.
Okay.
Yeah, I talked to Mac at Media Day, and I said Blewett that way. He didn't correct me, so I'm gonna assume that's the
well,
way.
Even worse, I interviewed him over the summer, but I never had to say his last name, and I felt weird asking him about it. So.
Yeah.
I just kind of went over it. I glossed over it.
So yeah, it'd be Sumner at the point, and then I think they're gonna. Are they running 4 guards?
They might run 4 guards. They might run.
Xavier's actually been the hardest team to put the players properly in our rankings because we don't know where anyone's gonna be.
Yeah. But I think that's actually kind of cool and could actually help them because they can. I mean, they can run like different lineups to run with different teams.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what Villanova does, and
Yeah.
it works for them.
I actually think Xavier kind of their model seems to be kind of like Nova. Like I feel like they're trying to like get into that because Nova is considered like I think the only Big East, maybe Georgetown occasionally, but like that's considered a Power 5 team, but they're just not in a Power 5 conference.
Yep.
And I think Xavier's model has been to kind of push towards being more like Nova in that sense.
Yeah, yes, I definitely agree with that, and you know they're going to have to this year because you lose Stainbrook, you do lose some size, but you know you have Jalen Reynolds, who will probably, I guess, be your center technically.
Likely will be the starting center for them. Yeah.
I think he's going to have a big year. I still think he needs polish on his offensive game, but like just I think he's going to be great. I really like him this year.
I know CBS yesterday it was called him a dark horse for the NBA draft, and if he can stay out of trouble and whatnot, because he's run into some trouble academics and some legal stuff last year in the NCAA tournament, but if he can stay out of all that and kind of fill in for what Stainbrook did a little bit in terms of scoring and rebounding, I can see him getting drafted.
Yeah. What's interesting is Reynolds, like you might not have thought it just because he wasn't like a go-to offensive option, but his PER was, I think, it was a top 10 in the conference last year. Yeah, he was 4th behind Stainbrook. Oh no, they tied at 25.3. Now a lot of that might have been just because all of his points were just kind of like putbacks or easy buckets, but that said, he has more offensive game than I think people give him credit for.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I definitely agree there as well. He was one of the better rebounders in the country as well, and in the conference too. He had the 35th best defensive rebounding percentage at 24.6%, 125th in offensive rebounding, 11.9%. Pretty good shot blocker as well. Drew a lot of fouls per 40 minutes, 4.6 to be precise, which was second best on the team, behind Matt Stainbrook, who drew 5 per 40 minutes. So Reynolds is a very stout player, and I mean, they're going to have two guys at their disposal this year in Reynolds and James Farr, who are both 6'10". So, and that's definitely a luxury to say the least.
Yeah, I think the big key is going to be how well Farr steps in. I think that's going to be Farr that needs to step into the Stainbrook role so that Reynolds can play off of him. Because I don't know, my only concern with Reynolds is if he becomes the guy, if his production will go down, not rebounds and everything like that, but if his scoring will be tougher when teams key in on him more. Because now they don't have to take as much attention to the other forward or big man spot. But that is unless Farr steps up, and I think he's more than capable of doing that.
Yeah, but also at the same time, you can work it out to Blewett or Miles Davis, and that kind of frees up the inside a little bit too. So
For sure.
It'll be interesting.
No.
All right. Schedule for this year is okay. They play a decent amount of local teams and then still a couple SEC teams who are better this year. So they got that going for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bama's going to be better this year. I think Auburn might be better. Missouri I'm not as high on, but
they're not.
And then in the Advocare Invitational, they could play Wichita State, which would be big. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, plus they have probably the most to gain from their Gavitt game. Well, no, Georgetown does, but probably the second most to gain with a win in the Gavitt games at Michigan.
Yep.
That game's gonna be really fun.
Oh yeah, that was one I was really excited for when it came out.
Yeah,
the problem, I'm looking at the date now. That is the same night as Georgetown, Duke. Wisconsin, whoever they play first.
Georgetown plays Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's the same night as Michigan Xavier.
I
which is kind of annoying.
Yeah. Who was one at 7? Maybe Georgetown Duke. I bet is at 7.
Yeah, I think they might. I think they might be.
Yeah. Well, okay, that works then. That'll work. But yeah, no, Michigan Xavier will be a lot of fun actually because they're actually kind of similar programs, at least coming in now. Very guard heavy, kind of run and gun teams.
Yeah. I like and Karis LeVert. I like a lot. I think him versus Blue Yat will be pretty fun to watch.
Yep.
For the record, with regards to Georgetown, Wisconsin, that game is on at 5 Eastern.
Oh, okay.
So plenty of time.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense since they want Duke to have the main event.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, you can watch both. There you go.
Mhm.
And then, of course, Cincinnati, crosstown shootout's huge. Cincinnati's going to be really good this year. They pretty much lost nobody from last year's team. And they brought in, actually, like, decent recruits. So they're really deep. And, you know, they play like any Cincinnati team does. Like, they're not great offensively, but they beat the crap out of you on defense and just, you know, are really aggressive, and especially since it's Xavier, like it should be tight, just like last year.
Yeah, and Mick Cronin's back this year, right?
Yep, yeah, he'll be back. Yeah, he's healthy at least as far.
That'll be good. I can't believe that game is not nationally televised anywhere, at least not that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, that could change.
Well, yeah.
I think it's now because based on like what I've been reading and stuff, the verdict on Cincinnati is kind of mixed. There's some people that are like me that think they're going to be really good, and then there's other people that are like, they'll be all right. Like I know today was American Media Day, and they picked UConn and SMU to finish above them, which I'm not like upset about, but I think SMU is going to take a step back for some reason. I just kind of have a gut feeling about that, and I think Cincinnati is better than UConn is this year.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But again, I could be biased. I'm not covering UConn on a daily basis.
Yeah, you know, we were in Cincinnati over the summer and actually did the drive from the Cintas Center to Fifth Third, and it is, you could tell why people are so into it, because it is a short drive. It is legitimately just cross town.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's pretty cool. There's not many rivalries in college basketball that are in the same city.
Yeah, or as contentious.
That too. Yeah. I mean, all right. Let's see. Chris, you want to touch on any games here?
I mean, we've gone at length about Xavier, Michigan. We've talked about Xavier, Cincinnati. So, I mean, those are probably the top two right now with regards to Xavier's non-conference schedule. So, I mean, if you want to depart to something else, I'd be content with that.
Let's see here. Their recruiting class, they didn't actually have much of a recruiting class because they were returning so many people.
Yeah, the only person they're bringing in this year is Kaiser Gates.
Yeah, who was, I think, about 3 stars?
Believe so.
I know the recruiting class for 2016 is already loaded.
Yeah.
Them and Butler actually have the 2 best classes already. They're each about 3 or 4 deep. So there's not a whole ton to talk about with recruiting. Kaiser Gates will play a little bit of a role because he can play the 3 and the 4. So you can definitely find a spot for him, and just depth in general. It's always a good thing to have.
I think especially since Xavier, they may go like small at times and things like that. I think Gates, I mean, he could get in and get some play if Mac wants to go bigger sometimes. You know, go with maybe 2 forwards and Gates playing the 3 if he can do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have those kind of versatile guys. Actually, one thing I've noticed about Xavier recruiting, have you ever noticed how they offer pretty much every player in Ohio? I mean, it's not a bad strategy. Ohio's decent basketball state, so I don't blame them. But it's just funny how just every single player.
Yeah, they can't all go to Ohio State.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, conference play. Where do you think that they're going to finish? I think we can all agree they're going to be in the top 4 of the conference. I think pretty much everyone can agree that it's Villanova, Georgetown, Butler, Xavier in whatever order.
Yeah, I think it's Xavier 4, to be honest. I think Nova's 1. I don't think that there's much conversation there. And then I think Georgetown and Butler are the next 2. And I think Xavier will go 4. When I did the conference schedule analysis back in, was it August, I think, or July, I have them going 11-7.
Okay.
Which is pretty good. I mean, I think they will do better than last year, but I think that's all partially because I think the Big East is worse this year. I think St. John's is going to be terrible. I think that's a big loss, and I'm not super high on Providence even with Chris Dunn.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I mean, I don't blame them, but I still think we'll probably be good enough to get them into the tournament. But I don't know if we can get them in the top 4 of the conference.
Yeah. Oh, that's all I mean. Last year I think there were like 6 legitimate teams that could have fallen anywhere between 2 and 6, and this year I think there's only 4 that are top 4 guys. Like I could see Providence like slipping to 7 or something like that.
Yeah. Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both. I think Xavier's probably going to be in that top 4 with Villanova and Georgetown and Butler. Villanova's preseason favorite. I'd be shocked if they didn't win the conference. There, I kind of waver on Georgetown and Butler, depending on what order they finish. But I definitely think that Xavier has a opportunity to be 4th safely in the NCAA tournament when all is said and done. So yeah, I would probably agree with Phil here, and I would say that 11-7, maybe if they luck out, 12-6 would be enough for them to get 4th or 3rd, maybe even 3rd at best in the Big East right now.
Yeah, I think obviously Villanova's probably number 1. It is tough from there, though. I think I'd put Georgetown number 2 right now, and then Xavier and Butler maybe in a virtual tie. Because Butler, actually, they were good last year, but Alex Barlow actually meant more to that team than I think people realize, and Butler I think Tyler Lewis is a good replacement, but I think it might take a while, and that could cost Butler a conference game or 2, and that could make a difference. But, I mean, finishing 3rd, finishing 4th in the Big East, I think we can all agree Xavier probably safely in the tournament right now.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think they'll finish. I think they're going to finish better in the conference than they did last year. And even though obviously what they did in the Big East tournament helped their resume, I think if you can go like a record above 500 in the Big East and finish with 20 or so wins, I think that'll be enough to get them in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I do worry about, they don't have a ton of chances to rack up good non-conference wins, aside from Michigan and probably Cincinnati, and if they do end up playing Wichita State or whatever. But it's not the best non-conference that we have seen, but there have been worse. I mean, they take care of business; they're fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think pretty much all their non-conference games, even the tougher ones, are winnable. I mean, at Michigan will be tough because it's on the road, but I think Cincinnati's on paper, like on a neutral site. I think I'm sorry, not Cincinnati. Xavier is the better team. So if they can play and stay with them on the road, I could see that being a win. And I think as much as I think Cincinnati is good, I think they can beat Cincinnati because I think the rivalry is it's just one of those games where like it doesn't really matter where each team is. Like they're both going to bring it, and Xavier's had the upper hand recently against them anyway. I think they've won 3 straight against them, or they won back-to-back, and this would be 3 straight. It's one of the 2.
They do have a pretty tough stretch in February, though. They go 2 Creighton, 2 Butler, Providence at home, 2 Georgetown, Villanova at home. So that's one of the toughest 5-game stretches you'll see in conference play.
Mm-hmm.
Because going to Creighton's tough, going to Butler obviously. So they might need to. That might be a time when they falter a little bit, and so they're going to have to rack up some wins prior to that.
They also have a tough, like, right out of the gate, they go at Nova and then versus Butler. So, I mean, I think they'll beat Butler at home, but it is possible that they could be 0-2 like, right away, which wouldn't be a great way to start.
Yeah, no, you don't want to fall to 0-2 right out the gate, but I mean, they do get St. John's and DePaul after that, so those should be 2 wins.
I agree.
If you win one of the Villanova or Butler games, you're looking at 3-1, or at worst, you should be 2-2 after that stretch.
Yeah. I think realistically, I think 3-1 is like if Xavier's like for real and they're really gonna compete at 3-1 where they'll be. I think if they're just gonna end up being kind of middle of the pack in the Big East, they'll be 2-2 after it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough to do conference games, and we have this problem with every team so far because the conference is really so close together, aside from Villanova and DePaul and St. John's. Because even though Creighton's not that good, it's not easy to go there and win.
Yeah.
They'll be sold out, and it's a 20,000-seat venue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris.
And I guess it's worth noting that they lost to St. John's both times last year. Obviously, this is a totally different St. John's team, so it doesn't really hold that much water, but it's worth mentioning, I think.
I think they're going to Carnesecca. I don't think they're going to the Garden this year, which actually I would argue that might even favor St. John's more, especially in a down year because you have less seats to fill.
Yeah.
So that could be a tough game, yeah. I mean, it's never easy to go on the road.
Yeah. Well, I'm not predicting that they'll have tons of trouble with St. John's. I'm just saying like they did lose to them twice. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at their KenPom page right now. He has them projected to have the tournament games notwithstanding, because he doesn't account for those yet. He has them losing on the road at Michigan, and then on the road at Wake Forest as well, an improved Wake Forest team. So 2 non-conference losses. Which worth mentioning, I suppose, that the Wake Forest loss was only projected to lose by 1 point, so it's kind of a coin flip game there. The Michigan game was a 5-point loss, only won 28% of the time, and then in conference he has them projected, as Phil mentioned, at 11-7, with losses at Villanova, at Marquette, at Providence, at Hinkle versus Butler, at Georgetown, and at home against Villanova.
Okay. I mean,
I think that sounds like I don't remember exactly which ones I all like penciled in as wins and losses, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I agree.
Where did KenPom have them ranked?
He had them tied for second in the conference, along with Butler and Georgetown, and preseason ranked number 31.
So that would kind of constitute safely in the tournament if you go.
Oh.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, if they only lose 2 non-conference games, I think, and they finish 11-7 in the league, I mean that's like we were saying. I think that's more than enough to get them in.
And I know Banners on the Parkway did a preseason KenPom bracketology, and they had Xavier as an 8.
That also sounds right.
With the KenPom record. The other 8 seeds would be UConn, Pitt, and Butler. So all Big East past and present. And
Well, and age probably where they were last year before their Big East tournament run. So yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that based on what we know right now, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because I mean, if you don't factor in the Thanksgiving tournament and the Big East tournament, yeah, like just straight on paper, probably an 8. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's kind of just their floor. I really don't see them dipping much lower than that.
Oh no.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, this definitely won't be a repeat of 2 years ago where they're playing Dayton. I think they'll be.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. What else do we got? Let's go back to Mac for a second. Where do you rank him among coaches in the Big East?
Let's see, Mac. Well, I'd probably go right first.
Yep.
I think I'd probably go 3, but I don't know who I'd put at 2 between Thompson and Ed Cooley because I like both of them a lot. But I think Mac is right up there, and Holtman's in the conversation too. But I'd have Mac somewhere between 2 and 5. Probably, I think 3 is probably where I'd put him.
Yeah, I think I'd probably have him as high as second behind Jay Wright, just because it's not. I mean, Ohio, like I said, there's a lot of good athletes. It's not easy to get good recruits and to get them to come to a school like Xavier, where some of these guys he recruited still when they were in the Atlantic 10.
Yeah.
It just shows he's done a great job. 3 Sweet 16s with, and he doesn't have the best team always. I mean, but he gets the most out of them, and they fit the style.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think I'm kind of letting the success Providence has had recently kind of color me on Cooley because before that they weren't really doing much. But I do think Holtman deserves a lot of credit for what he's done at Butler, turning them around. Not turning them around, but they had that one rough year and then they were back last year. So.
Well, Holtman will be interesting actually starting next year because. I actually thought Butler was going to be pretty good last year with Roosevelt Jones coming back, and with Jones and Dunham this year, they should be good. But next year, when he gets all of his players in there, it'll actually be interesting to see how good Holtman is.
Yeah,
I think he's good, but that's the one truth. Chris.
I'm with Phil here again as well. I definitely would have Jay Wright number 1, and then from there. It's kind of tough because you have John Thompson III, very accomplished, has a heck of a resume at his disposal despite the gaffes in the NCAA tournament, which may or may not be his fault necessarily. The NCAA tournament's always about matchups. I mean, notwithstanding that loss to 15 seed Florida Gulf Coast, has run into some issues, just like Villanova has. In the past few years with regards to the tournament. So you have him, you have Chris Mack, who has done a terrific job with the team, and of course Holtman did a fantastic job with Butler, stepping in pretty much out of nowhere, helping guide them to the tournament. I think pretty much it's Jay Wright on one tier, and then you have those 3 on the next 3 or 4 on the next year, and from there it's okay, well, you can pretty much rank them in any order that you want, and I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
And Rob, to your point about Mac, and I think that Xavier's success with Mac, getting to the Sweet 16 3 times now in his career there, Natty. I think that's definitely helping the program's cause because, okay, look at us. We've gone to the Sweet 16 before. We can get there again. You can come play with us, and you can go pretty far in the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, before we move on from the coach thing, I think Waj at Marquette, he in like a year or two, he'll be in that same tier with Holtman and Mack and stuff. He's done a great job recruiting.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't go back to Duke eventually.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean that's something you got to worry about with all the Coach K guys that are around right now.
Yep.
Coaching really. What else do we have to touch on here?
I know when I talked to Matt or Moody Day, we were talking about Trevon Blewett and his expectations for New Smith to have a great season. So give me a stat line for Blewett that you think realistically could happen this season.
I definitely think his scoring is going to jump somewhat considerably. I see him being like a 16, 17 points per game guy. 4 rebounds, 2 or 3 assists a game.
Yeah, I mean maybe the field goal percentage goes up a little bit because sophomore now takes some better shots.
Yeah.
15 to 17 points I could see.
Yeah, I think his rebounding and assist numbers are his assist numbers I could see going up just because without Davis they need they'll have to have more people distribute, and I think he'll have the ball in his hands a lot. But rebounds I think he'll probably stay about the same. And I agree on I think his efficiency numbers will go up just because he's had a year to get used to the college game, and he's had a summer to really work out and get ready for year 2.
It's fair to me, and I pretty much agree that ballpark 15 to 17 points is probably about right. Probably about 4 to 6 rebounds per game. His rebounding rates weren't spectacular last season, but more opportunities could fall his way, of course. But when they'll have lineups of James Farr and Jalen Reynolds on the floor, I mean it's obviously tough to be collecting rebounds from guys who are 6'10". So.
Yeah.
Assist numbers, they could go up a little bit, 2 or 3-ish in that area. So, yeah, we pretty much came there. So that's always nice.
Yeah, I think if he really makes a jump and scoring, I think is a given. But I think if he really makes a jump in another area or something like that, I think that's something that could push him to. Because right now, I'm not sure if he would be first team All Big East. Was he on it? I can't remember. When that
don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, what I'm getting at is just that I think if he makes a bigger leap at like one of these areas than we're even talking about, and I think he could, I could see him being a dark horse player of the year candidate, depending on how good Xavier is. Like I think he's going to be really, really good this year.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. What else?
I think we've just touched on everything. So.
Yeah, we really have. It's these get a little shorter when we don't have questions submitted, but we covered everything, and
yeah.
If you're going to Cincinnati for a Xavier game, get yourself some graders, even if it's the middle of the winter. It's worth it. I guess Skyline too, if you must. And really, Xavier's got a nice campus. I was impressed with it, so enjoy it. Center Center looked nice from the outside. Yeah. So. I think we're about done here.
Yep.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, no problem, Phil. Thanks for joining us. Everybody, we'll be back on Friday to discuss, I believe, St. John's is next?
Yes, St. John's is next. Finally. They've been saying it for a while, and it's not been right, but yes.
Yeah, this one will be a little bit interesting to talk about a team that's probably going to take a step and a half or two back, at least for this year. Maybe in the future they'll be a little bit improved, but their new head coach has the hands full this year, that's for sure.
Definitely.
All right.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Yep.
All right. Take care, Phil. All right. So, folks, thanks for listening again to the Big East Coast Bias Season Preview Hangout. We'll be back, as I noted, on Friday afternoon to discuss the Red Storm. And then from there, we'll continue the series as the season approaches. So be sure to keep up to date with everything that we have at Big East Coast Bias. Tomorrow we're ranking power forwards. Sometimes it gets a little confusing, but I do know that one player that we discussed on this show today will be featured, and featured rather prominently as well.
Yep.
So be sure to be on the lookout for that. We've still got a lot of content to come for you guys, so keep reading and be patient with us as the season approaches. We're only 16 days away now, so getting a lot closer.
Are we just not going to talk about your hat? Are we just
the Kansas City hat?
Yeah.
Yeah, go Royals.
Wow.
Thankful for the fact that they won last night.
Wow.
What?
You're a Yankees fan.
I might be a Yankees fan, but then that means that I'm not rooting for the Mets. So,
All right. Just kind of
that's exactly it. God.
got that for no real reason except for.
Hey, they play the T-Wolves tonight. New Jersey's own Karl Anthony Towns is playing up, so you got to look out for that.
Yeah, and you got Kobe and Kevin Garnett, so.
Yeah, so blast from the past from the 2003 Western Conference Finals.
Everybody's game?
Yeah, that's on ESPN.
Okay, so, I believe San Antonio, since we're talking about Xavier here, San Antonio starts tonight also with David West.
Yeah, they play the Thunder. So that'll
probably be on national TV.
That's an ESPN game as well. That's the game before.
There you go. You want to watch David West, who has a decent chance at winning a ring this year, which that's what it was all about for him. He said, he took the minimum to play in San Antonio, and, good for him.
Yeah, can't fault him for that. Can't fault him for that. And if you're into former Big East players, the Thunder might be of your liking, just because they have former Syracuse Orange guard Dion Waiters.
Yeah, and
they also have Marquette's Steve Novak as well, brother from another mother, for me.
Yeah, and just getting back to Xavier one more time, you are likely a Cavs fan, Pacers fan, probably somewhere in the middle. But if you're a Cavs fan, they're going to Memphis tonight. They are probably about to be 0-2.
Yeah, it's never easy to go to the greenhouse, that's for sure.
I mean, you got to go to Chicago and then Memphis. That's rough.
That's brutal.
All right, so we kind of went off the rails at the end instead of the beginning, so different for us.
Hey, that's fine. That's fine.
Anyway, just one more note, in case you didn't hear it. If you go to Xavier for a basketball game or whatever, get yourself some graders.
Yes, it's great ice cream.
Big East Coast Bias and John Rothstein approved.
Yep, I can't deny that. I believe Mac approves it as well. So if you want to just follow the leaders.
Yeah, Xavier was actually one of the stops on Big East Coast Bias on the road.
They were, rather, I should say.
We were there for their graduation, so we couldn't really see anything.
Yeah. That was a heck of a summer trip we took.
All right. I think we're actually done now.
Yep. I believe that's it. So for Rob, I'm Chris. As always, stay tuned, y'all. The season's coming soon.
See you Friday.
Yep.